Welcome back to Ben where we discuss all things Latin and writing and books, and my dog periodically tries to harmonize with us.
I mean, it's musical. And you know, honestly, your dog's syntax is on point.
It is. She's good at that.
Yeah, she is. So we're going to recap here. Hello, Ben.
Hi.
Hey. And Ben is working on his first novella, and we're going to talk about some of the things that he would like some help with, where he's had a little bit of trouble. And yes, we're going to talk about syntax with or without Cleo's harmony. So we're also going to talk about vocabulary, which do lend themselves to tone and to leveling in terms of difficulty. And I really want to take a gander at your first sentence, because that sentence can be really important in hooking a reader. So your first sentence is actually not bad. In atrios corpus. It's unusual. I don't often meet a dead body before I meet anybody else, so that's cool. But I actually think it would be much more interesting if you combined those first three sentences for something like in atrio corpus mortuum and pavimento jacet. And we're going to talk with significantly more depth about syntax in a later episode, but it's less choppy to kind of combine these things and these sentences, and creates more interest. And even a dead body can have action, even if that action is just lie dead on a cold pavement. So I think one of the traps that we can fall into as writers is thinking that we need to have those simple, repetitive sentences. But varying your sentence length can create interest, it can create movement, and it can connect ideas more strongly. And that's probably one of the reasons why I write longer sentences, is because I do want those strong connections between ideas. We need sentences and paragraphs to move so the story can move. And what I see in your first paragraph over and over again is that simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence. And I'd really love to see you connect your ideas. And yeah, you can do that at every level of Latin.
Cool. I guess I got kind of stuck in expositing facts and forgot to, make it interesting. As y'all have said, like the brain craves novelty, and the Sims variation looks like it's going to be a good way to sneak that in. I think I just need to kind of take out the stylization, when you've gone through Metella est in atrio, Grumio est in culina by rote so many times, it's easy to just default into like model sentences, as if they have to learn a grammar concept with every phrase.
So you had mentioned leveling here also as one of your issues. I want to turn to vocab for a second, since that's really relevant to leveling, along with that sort of sentence clarity and movement. The writing level, these really basic choppy sentences that we're talking about, suggest that you want this to be for level ones. Although even at level one, like Rachel said, you don't need the choppy sentences. But it suggests, the simplicity suggests that you want to write this for level one. But the vocab level in here is such that I would aim this at Latin 3 or 4. There's just such a vocab load here. You've got a mismatch between your syntax, which Rachel was talking about, and the amount and complexity of the vocab you're giving them. I've bolded in here all of the words that I'm sitting here thinking, okay, is this going to get used enough? Why is this question here? Is this particular word going to lend so much to your plot that you need it? Or are you going to get 15 chapters in and think, I never used murus again?
Although, interestingly enough, pedes is a more frequently occurring word than puella.
It is, that's true. So don't include any puellae. And anywhere you want there to be a girl, replace it with feet. But yeah, like bucket, your hama and stulus and impluvium, they're great words, and they're great words for scene setting, but I'm not clear that they're adding enough to your scene, or that they're going to continue to do enough of that heavy lifting to be worth having them there. But they are adding to that comprehension load for your reader.
Okay. I was thinking of this as a resource for upper level students, but when I put on paper, I wasn't watching the vocab at all. I was just trying to get something down. But also, I think it's probably a mild hangover from teaching from a particular series of books that includes about 15 to 20 glosses per reading. So I certainly need to recalibrate there a little bit. I've got a question for y'all though. Like, yeah, how do you strike the balance between having enough variety in words to be interesting while not having so many that it's overwhelming?
That is kind of the question. That's a great question.
It is the question. The answer is not 42, unfortunately, for this one. So it's the crux of writing. And you kind of touched on something that I think is really important to like pause and rehash real quick. This is your first novella, and you sat down and you weren't thinking about vocab when you wrote it. That's exactly what I did with Cupid and Psyche. I like word vomited it all out. And a lot of times yes, it's typical, but a lot of times the work of editing comes in really trying to use those pruning shears or a chainsaw or, you know, a kitchen knife, whatever implement you have, to hack at the vocabulary and tighten it up some. So if this is for upper level students, you can absolutely up the difficulty of the sentences and the lexical load because students probably know more words. And if the vocabulary isn't going to do legwork for you, chop it off with whatever implement you have. I have a hard time envisioning you're going to use impluvium 15 times without the writing feeling hamstrung and awkward. So being really intentional about which words you use can help move your story along. Reread what you've written and ask yourself if the word is useful or exciting, or if you need the word to tell your story. Sometimes I reread something, I'm like, God, I've only used this word 6 times. Can I say this sentence without this word? Can I still get the idea across? And a lot of that is really back-end work when you've got a draft and you're revising. And again, you might need to step away from your original clue goal so that you don't have to use impluvium. But that doesn't mean you can't tell an awesome murder mystery with limited vocab.
Rachel hit the nail on the head. Sometimes removing a word doesn't mean looking for a synonym for it. It can actually just mean restructuring the entire sentence. But also that variety in words doesn't just mean having a whole bunch of different words. It means having really vivid words that are going to let you do a whole lot with them, with a couple of words that serve as kind of verbal dessert, if you will. They are delicious and rich and glorious, but you can't have too much of them because then the doctor yells at you about your cholesterol. This is not personal at all. I have highlighted words, like I said, in this scene that don't strike me as important to the scene's color. You can see that there are a bunch. So the first question to ask is exactly what Rachel said. Are these words going to earn their keep for you? These are like kitchen tools. You have a small kitchen, so your tools either need to earn their keep by doing lots of things, or they have to do their one job so well that you cannot bear to get rid of them because nothing else does the job. So I would just turn to this with a really critical eye and say, what are the vivid words? What do I need? What's keeping my story moving? And what's there because I wanted detail, but I'm not actually sure I need that detail. Can I use the other vivid words that I have to build that detail? Okay. As for how to choose them, I'd start by looking at a frequency list. We never ever advise anybody to look at a frequency list, so this is super new advice. But while you're looking at that frequency list, Rachel, would you like to sing the DCC is the best frequency list song, part 37?
I love the DCC. It's so easy to skim and look at, and also sort by like thematic topics. So you have a murder mystery, you can search for like, my cat has decided to join us. You can search for like violence and use vocabulary there. So I love the DCC. I really want to know, Ben, when you see these words highlighted, whether you think that they would be ones that you would use a lot in your novella.
Some of them, yeah. Or at least in the original conception, all of the little knickknacks that they would have, like the fact that she's in the impluvium and has a bucket on her head. That's part of the plot, how she wound up in the impluvium with a bucket on her head. Things like cognoscere or something. Togam praetextam, like the very culturally specific vocab, or something where there's possibly some synonyms. Those are less crucial to me, and like things like the impluvium and the bucket are worth revisiting and like thinking, okay, is it actually interesting that she's in the impluvium with a bucket on her head, or was that just kind of me being silly, and it'll be a better story if I can let that go.
I think that that's a really good starting
Awesome.
point. So yeah, sit down with that list, that thematic vocabulary. Emma Vanderpool suggests a great method for denoting what vocab you think is going to be most important, useful, and just kind of there, helpful. She suggests drawing circles labeled like most useful, rather useful, there. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing. And then putting in what vocab you think is going to be really thematic and that you think is going to get the most reps. And then vocab that you really do need to tell the story, but that's probably going to get fewer repetitions. And then vocab you care a little less about, but that you still see yourself using. And that can help you weed some of those things out. It gives you an idea of what words are most central. And while you're looking at the Dickinson College commentaries or whatever frequency list you choose while singing Rachel's song in your head, I would make a list of the vocab that strikes you, vocab that feels really evocative and useful to your story, and is high frequency in Latin, and then make it a specific point to use the thematic vocab and the vocab that you think is really evocative while being high frequency. It does mean that people can end up being tired or savage a lot, but if you're clever about it, you can make that fairly seamless and it won't come off like you're trying to teach the word savage.
All right.
Savage. Not that I've had kids say that before in the classroom.
Cookie break?
Yeah, cookie break. Let's do cookie.
Okay, we'll be back shortly.